It's a funny way these questions come. And at first I think that something boring or not of substance, but the way you throw light on them makes me to take myself serious when writing this down. I always think there is a joke until the discussion starts. And there again we go, you have a way of just seems to spy on my script here, and you say some things which in anticipation of what I'm going to say. Like you talked about the Dali Lama. Yeah, I have him today. I have a quote from him. And I thought I should bring this up as an instance of old wisdom that serves a purpose. So the Dalai Lama says that he says, remember that not getting what you want is sometimes a wonderful stroke of luck. Yeah, let me take it all over again. Remember that not getting what you want is sometimes a wonderful stroke of luck. So Duane, as a new man, you expected to be announced and take on the reins of what Paul Tuchel created here, but the doors were barricaded and you could not get in. So if this saying of the Dalai Lama is anything to go by, do you think you have had a wonderful stroke of luck by not being allowed to become the new man of what Paul Tuchel created as Eckankar? Duane?
We could make a movie on that, Charles, and it would be very, very romantically interesting, wouldn't it? Yes, we could do that. We could bring it around. But actually, no, it was a lot of pain, suffering, and torture to get here. Yes. So again, you could say, oh, gee, you got lucky. But no, it really, I had to figure it out. So we like to use the idea of luck, and that's another word idea I do not use either, etc. And I will, say that word sometimes. Oh, maybe you'll get lucky and it'll happen, because again, maybe and lucky are basically the same thing, you see. And so they market lucky too, especially with the lotto and other things, the lucky lotto and whatever. And again, it's a maybe, isn't it? And so what the Dalai Lama is saying is that, it sounds cool, doesn't it? It's like Harry on stage. It really, these ideas sound really cool. But really, what do they mean, compared to what life is? In other words, they're just little whispers in the wind. And what do they relate to? So, again, it's more along the lines of actually, you talk about the passions of the mind, morals. In other words, people are more into the ideas of morals and ethics, but more so morals. Okay, is that morally right? How do you feel morally about that, or whatever this expression is used, and what is the definition of that too, etc. So, it becomes so convoluted with the personal self And so, yes, in a way, yes, it was my experience with that. Yeah, the doors were shut. And at the time, because what I was aware of at that time, it was a little perplexing. Yeah, it was, because I had expectations. You know, I had saw the procedure before me, okay? And I just figured, okay, well, this is the procedure. And, you know, Harold would call me because of the real side experiences I had with him, and then come to be so here. But again, on the real side is one thing, and what the personal self decides is another. Besides, Joni was not in agreement. She don't care about the real side experiences. You know, again, it's all choice. So it is a heck of a challenge here. But this challenge brings about the recognition. I recognized the is in its own way at the time, but through this process, this struggle, this hell, this torture, and almost dying, etc., uh, you know, I recognize a lot more. And so, yeah, that's just how it is. So, you know, the real guides, you know, they don't do this or that. They do certain things for us. Of course, they make certain adjustments or whatever, like your parents would. But with the whole of life, because life is an isness, they're in such a state of being that it's whatever life is. So it's accordingly. So in creation, though, we make choices. And this is the interesting part. In the isness, you don't need free will, or to, you might say, make choices, because it's a very interesting position. That's the best part. You're free of all that. You don't need that. But to recognize that and how to stand real with that, that's a particular. So, yeah, my struggle was great here because of what is physically taking place. But at the same time, you might say it was necessary, you think? So, and everybody goes about it in their own way. So what I've done is, with what I've provided, it's made it a lot easier for others not to have to go through that struggle, you see? And so it's kind of like your parents. They went out there, they got the job, they bought the house, they did everything so that you had a place to stay, so you don't have to struggle. And if they leave the earth, you can take over their house like Ava did. All of a sudden, she lives in the same house her parents did. So that was provided for her. So this is what we do for each other. So everything that we're doing here also provides for others. So yeah, all these things that we go through personally, again, you see, now all of a sudden you see how extensive what you brought up, the 5 passions are. And there's a lot to write about, and bringing this around. That's the fun part. I like the challenge of, how am I going to say this, or exemplify this, or demonstrate this, and bring this around? And this is what we're doing with the projects, with the trees, the vessel project, and anything we're doing with the John Ellis water, whatever. And the kids are doing their greens and whatever. And you know, the idea is that we're doing something that can relate to what we're really here doing. Yes, and so that's the fun part. That's the challenge. I like the challenge. I do. I have many. I do many things more than James Bond. Okay, so with the Galactic and whatever, more than James Bond. Yeah, James Bond. The James Bond movies are nothing compared to what I'm really doing here, and the other things, and that I haven't told about. Someday I may write about them. We'll see, but it's not important. So there's a lot to go through in the meantime. So the 5 passions, again, the whole world is involved in the 5 passions. So you have plenty to write about, and at the same time, bringing it around to what we're doing that makes sense. That's the difference. So it's not about wisdom anymore, is it? It's not about this or that or divine or love and all these things. Fine. Those are personal choices. You want happiness, you want security, you want this or that. Yeah, and fine. We all utilize these things while we have these bodies here. But the best is to recognize what's real and what makes sense right now from all that doesn't make sense. So you got a lot of comparisons out there. I see it all the time. It's a field of comparisons. It's an ocean of comparisons here in creation as to what's going on. And it's more than obvious most of creation, because it's collapsing, is agreeing to its own demise. So you have a lot of comparisons, etc. because most people want to be influenced. And again, that's the five passions, the influence, that's the five passions. Joni is very passionate about ruling the world and even this realm and the planet or whatever, etc. Who isn't? She's got a lot of competition there, etc. So, yeah, it's all passion, isn't it? So there you go. See, got a lot to compare to with what we're really doing, what the isness life is, and getting it to the best point you can of definition to where the individual has an opportunity to start to see this reality more so than any belief or that it doesn't exist at all, because it does, but it is in no way any consideration with what you can consider or even imagine. So what is it? Yeah, that's the fun part, Charles. So there you go. You got plenty to do, don't you? So now the Africans, now you can get them jumping up and down, right? Without their spears.
Yeah. Hopefully, things are going to turn around. Yeah, then you've also hinted at something that I would have said later on, but you've already touched on it, made a hint. Okay, let me explain it. So people like to prop themselves, to paint themselves in a favorable light. But what I find is that you engage in self-sabotage. Well, you talk about having nothing of the big structures, no membership of the corporation. You don't have the huge buildings, nor the money coming in like in the Eckankar Corporation. And yes, these are verifiable facts, and they prove your genuineness and your realness. But why would anyone in your position sabotage themselves? Then you also mentioned how you were married and you had a girlfriend at the same time. And I find that is something that doesn't conform to conventional social decorum, and it casts a shadow over your social personality and likability, at least in this one-dimensional view of things. So I also think that these things like being casting oneself in a favorable light, is a kind of lever for whatever one wants to do or say. So, Duane, what I may ask you is, why do you sabotage yourself?
It would seem like that, wouldn't it? But actually, all life is experience. And what is marriage, really? It's an idea. It really is an idea. It's really a contract between two people, if you're going to bring it into the business world. And, yeah, for the most part, I accept that. I'm socially unacceptable. And this is why they go to Kelsey or especially Ava or whatever people. I'm the scary guy. And Rebazar is the same way, and Paul too, and all the real guys, they're just too real. And I accept that. I'm fine with that. Actually, I like it. It keeps, with the personal self, I like my privacy, and at the same time, I like the involvement too. That's fun, but at times, I like my privacy. And so this has worked out very well to where, when I know that a lot of people read book two and whatever, and, usually that's never mentioned. Maybe one person out of the whole experience since I wrote the book referred to that. But, Rebazar brought all this around. He's introduced me to everybody. He brings them around because it's about experience. They're not concerned about social indoctrination, social rules and regulations, social morals or commandments, and etc. And through the experience, yes, people were affected with their feelings, etc. But at the same time, they could have excelled if they saw what was really going on, you see. So those are of a particular, that's my experience. I don't mind sharing it because it's all added up to so much to be recognized. That's the best part, you see. And so, and we're all friends, and it's not that we should be or not, or like or dislike. It's not about that. And so, yeah, I don't try and justify that in any way. People can think what they want, but I accept that being socially mainly unaccepted, and I kind of like it my own way, so that people, don't do funny things, which people like to do. But they put it on Facebook or something like that. But everybody has their life. We all go through things. We've all done funny things, and it's just this lifetime. We see this lifetime. But look at all the lifetimes we've been through. How many times you've been killed, or how many times you killed others, and aggressively done that, and hunted them down, and tortured them. We've all gone through this for lifetimes, and now we've come to this part here, to where through all of that, we eventually start to recognize why we are here and going through what we are. So these are simply experiences that give viewpoints, etc., to where people can realize that they don't have to just go along with the rules and regulations set by others and feel good with them and become emotionally stuck with those ideas, thinking that those ideas are bigger than life itself. So we deal with ideas here, okay, and these are just ideas, and we do what we do, etc. The old idea was a man could have a harem, etc., but he took care of them, like in the movie The King and I, and like the Mormons, etc. But I'm not using that as a reference to myself at all. No, these are just experiences that I went through. And so now I'm with Ava, but realistically it's being to being. This is the best part. It's being to being. We have our personal bodies here. That's one thing. And what a person chooses with that, that's their choice. It's just like a meal. They decide what they're going to eat. What is the right food? What is the wrong food? There is no right or wrong food. It's choice. And you will find out from what you're eating what the effects will be to yourself. And if you're fine with them, if you don't mind being crawling along the ground and being sick with what you're eating, fine. Go for it. It's your choice. It's fine. The boys are not going to reprimand you for it. They will try to show you that, okay, maybe you need a better diet, and you'd be okay. But again, it's your choice. You see, it's not about diet. Awareness is not about diet. It's not about health. I'm writing another group. It's called Not About Health. And so, yes, we do play with these ideas, etc. But it's about the isness. And this is the best part of the nowness, because, again, from Paul's day to this day and all these things we've come through, now you know about the isness. It's very well defined, where they just hinted at it before because people weren't ready for it. Now you better be ready for it, because this lifetime is ending very fast with all the demise that's going on, so you better pay attention and focus for yourself. That's a choice you make, etc. So very fortunate that all of this is here. So yes, the social behavior and all these things, etc. So I play with this too. So I have fun with it, and it actually bothers people. People have commented, why do you and Ava, why don't you show your real selves and all this stuff like that? Well, what is our real self? We all see ourselves in a particular way. We decide who we are. That's our right to do that. And we created these bodies. We're kind of stuck with them as they come in, and then they start to get really funny as the so-called time and space and age factor set in. We get a little bit more funny all the time. But again, these are just vehicles like an old car. They just become an old car. And so the bigger picture is what's being presented here. So this is where I've decided also the real universal position, which is a real awesome position, but it's not going to happen overnight, and it has to be seen. So I want to surpass everything that we've come to know for lifetimes. I've decided that I want to surpass that. And so who wants to do this also? Or do you want to just stay with your personal self, etc.? So that's the focus. And in the meantime, doing projects that keep the activity going that lead up to something a lot better than what we've ever known. More so than just being healthy, being whatever we are here, having friends, being happy, etc. More than that. Is there more than that? I see that there is. Like the sun shining, and way more than that. But you've got to decide it and see it. But to the personal self, it would seem like, oh, that's just fantasy. That's an illusion. Well, again, what is fantasy? What is illusion? And what is real? Again, you decide that. Each person decides that. So I always decide to take the risk and see what else there is. And all of a sudden, it becomes apparent, but it doesn't mean that everybody's going to see it. I present what I do to the world. The world decides what it's going to decide, what it's going to think for the most part, and what it wants to see or not for the most part. It doesn't want to see it. So I don't think for the world. I just present. That's it. That's where I stop. I present it. That's it. I did my part. Let's see who shows up. So, yes, social behavior is a particular, again, Charles, when you have these ideas, every time you have one of these ideas, I suggest you make a group on Facebook and sit there and define it the best way you can, and in some way bring it around to what we're doing. You see, that's the fun part. That's the challenge, to do that. You may not know what you're doing, but you know what? As you sit down and write, all of a sudden, little by little, the hints come in to help you along the lines, because now the is there, it sees what you're doing, so it's going to help you along the line of bringing forth ideas into that literal self of yours. But you got to take the risk to first not see it, and then eventually it does appear. That's how it works.